Boy, how's that for a lead-in, Mayor? How are you?
I'm well. I wasn't expecting the Jackson 5, but you know, why not? Yeah.
Yeah, not going to be a hot topic today, right? ABC?
Yeah, ABC. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, you got it?
I got it.
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah.
Well done, Barry. Yeah.
Thank you. I thought about that for about 5 minutes, and I said, hey, this ought to work.
I think that's a good catch. Yeah.
Yeah. Midweek with the mayor, Wednesday afternoon. Mayor Jon Mitchell is with us until
Sounds like
1
we're
o'clock.
talking trash again.
Yeah, we're going to talk some trash today. Got to talk some trash. Well, I mean, you know, Mike Camara, these guys have been in town for a long time, right? I mean, they've been in business since that before. I can remember when I was a small kid on Brook Street, they had a one truck. And they were a block over from me, and the Camara family went to school with Steve Camara and some of the Camara family and all of that. So they've been around for a long time.
They have, yeah.
Tough times. You don't want to see
it's
that
tough.
happen.
You know, look, I mean, it's a great family business, terrific family, and it's unfortunate that they, you know, we are where we are. You know, as mayor of the city, I have to work. I have to, as much as I can sympathize with, you know, the plight of the business, I owe it to city taxpayers to make sure that those who contract with the city are actually performing their contracts. And so we're left with little choice but to take the step we took this week, which is to seek an injunction to force the ABC to honor its duty under the contract. Taxpayers in the city are paying good money, almost $5 million a year, for ABC to perform all of the services that they agreed to, including recycling. And you know, this isn't the job of recycling isn't just about, you know, being green and you know, honoring some sort of, you know, green ethic or something along those lines. It's, you know, we recycle for, among other reasons, to make sure that our landfill doesn't fill up too fast and leave the city hanging in a position where it has to decide, you know, whether to ship its garbage to some far off place at great expense to taxpayers or to incinerate it, which is unlikely because the state, as we've discussed before, is unlikely to allow for that. So there's a lot of city dollars at stake here, and I hope that we can work it out. We've tried to over the last 6 months or so. You know, we've asked repeatedly for, you know, the business to say to show us its financials and to verify its claims, and only recently has it started to say, okay, we'll let you know. But, you know, look, I mean, we're talking about honoring a contract here, and we used last week the analogy of, you know, the kid who shovels your sidewalk and who says, you know, at the beginning of the season, you agree to $50 for the whole season, and he comes back later and says it snowed a lot more than I thought, and so can I have some more money? And, you know, your answer is, well, no, we had a deal. So that's kind of where we are. We look forward to discussing matters with them, and I you know, like to continue with ABC, but as I've said before, the city can't write a blank check, and we're not about to do that. And hopefully we can get to a point where we can move forward.
So we've gone to court, and I guess there's going to be a hearing next Tuesday,
right,
in Bristol County Superior Court, and the city is alleging that ABC has assessed $189,000 or more in additional charges outside of this contract, right, above and beyond what we had agreed to.
Yeah. Well, there's that, but the main point of the lawsuit is to make sure that they continue to perform their duties under the contract. They threatened, and through Mike Camara, the president of the company has threatened on numerous occasions, including in writing, with great specificity, that it is not going to, it will stop picking up recycling on July 1st. We can't mess around with that. And that's, look, if a company came to, shame on the mayor if we just sort of sat back and said, oh, geez, that stinks. So how much money do you need from the city? Right? We don't operate that way, and we can't. And so that we had to make sure that we were vindicating all of our legal rights under the contract.
So what does it take to make this right?
The bottom line for me is that recycling needs to be picked up. in the city. Trash obviously needs to be picked up, but recycling needs to be picked up, and we need to do that in the most cost-effective way for city taxpayers. And so what that will mean practically is that we would love to have ABC continue in its role as the service provider, and if it's not ABC, it'll have to be somebody else. We'd certainly prefer to have a local company doing it, though.
But what does it take to make this right with ABC? I mean, obviously, we'd have to renegotiate this contract or reopen this contract because they want more money. You want to see the books.
Yeah. Well, you have to ask Mike Camara that question, right? So, that's...
Well, you're the guy ultimately that's going to have to decide
whether
you stay with them.
I've got a contract that says we're paying you almost $5 million a year to pick up trash and recycling. Do what you're required to do. But at some point, you've got to pull the trigger. And you've got to say, hey, look, I'm not satisfied that they're going to follow through on their contractual agreement. So that's why we're going into court to get a court order that says... ABC, go pick up the recycling. You're required to do it. All
right, so that's what you're looking for, basically, the court to enforce that contract.
And what he's saying is we can't afford to do that. Well, what does that mean? That means you're going to might become a little less profitable, right? So, let's take another very simple example of a kid's lemonade stand, right? A kid on your block says, I'm going to sell you, Mr. Richard, the lemonade all summer long. You get it at 50 cents a glass. You can have it every day. And then in the middle of the summer, he comes back and says, you know what? The cost of the lemonade powder or the cost of lemons has gone up, and I can't make the profit that I once made. And you say, because you're a by the book guy, Barry. You say, it's no, we had a deal, right?
Well, actually, it'd be because Mitchell put a permit on him, right? Mitchell's going to get him for a permit.
Yeah, we call that the health department. Well, don't complicate the hypothetical.
You got to have running water and all this kind of stuff, and Mitchell's going to shut you down. So
no, but I mean, my point only is what he's saying is I'm less profitable because of what's happening in China. Well, we can't take that at face value. Well, so you're less profitable. There are lots of reasons why you could be less profitable, and frankly, you accepted the risk of becoming less profitable. Right. So that might mean, might mean a sacrifice in his lifestyle. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
well, are you willing to sit down and renegotiate if they open the books and say, look, the Chinese Sword Act or whatever the hell it's called this is killing companies all over the country.
I don't know if it's killing. It is hurting companies all over the country. There's no doubt about that. ABC went into bankruptcy before the China sword policy went into effect, Barry. So through some of its own business decisions, it put itself in a more precarious position. And then the China sword policy happened. I'm not unsympathetic to that, but they are a for-profit business. They are in the business of making money, like any private entity would be, for-profit entity. And so, when they say, someone comes to me and says, I'm a for-profit business and I've got to deal with the city, but I'm less profitable than I thought I would be. My question is, well, did you kind of accepted the risk of being less profitable? And so that might mean tightening your own belt a little bit. Mm-hmm. So that's, and until we know that, that's our position until we see, matters differently. And so we've been talking to them for several months now, and they've, haven't been entirely forthcoming with their books. I'll just leave it at that. But as I've said so many times before, I'm not going to write a blank check on to anybody from the city's account.
Are you willing to discuss paying more over the next 5 years?
So we'll see. We'll see in light of everything, in light of what we learn. I mean, I'm not closing the door on anything. All I know right now is my city has a contract with this company, and they've threatened not to honor the contract, and so we're going into court to get them to honor the contract. We're asking the judge to say, ABC, do what you said you would do.
So then the idea of renegotiating is not off the table. It's not out of the question.
No, we're a long way from doing that, though, Barry. And that's going to, and it won't be, renegotiating will be done in light of what we might pay others. I mean, ABC is not the only waste hauler out there.
So we each time you come in, we're that lemonade stand is getting a week closer to going out of business here. So, we're a week closer to a crisis point. How far along are you with discussions with other waste haulers at this point that somebody would be able to jump right in at the last minute if they need
to do recycling?
To do the recycling, yeah. ABC would still do the trash. Well, if they violate the contract, they're out of. I mean, the contract is broken, right?
Well, we're asking a judge to tell them to do it.
All right. But if they don't, if they don't pick
up the
recycling,
we've talked to other, and we are talking to other waste haulers.
All right. So another waste hauler then would pick up both, or you don't know at this point?
It remains to be seen.
All right. They're taking this personally. Mike Camaro was on the air with Phil this week, the morning mayor, the other mayor. And he said, and I quote, "I'm so upset because when you sue ABC Disposal, you sue my mother, Linda Camara, who's 83 years old. I mean, who would want their mom to be sued at 83 years old? It's just too much stress. It's not fair."
Well, I have an obligation to the residents of the city and to taxpayers, and that's what we're seeking to vindicate by going into court. And we don't do things personally. I like the Camara family. I respect the business they've built, but I've got my obligation is not to them and to their profitability. It's to the residents of the city who work hard and pay their taxes.
So you suggested their financial burden is more a result of some bad business dealings prior.
Don't know.
To this.
I can't tell you, Barry. I can't tell you if some of it is. How much of it's attributable to a change in Chinese national policy concerning recyclables? How much of it is attributable to they're making poor business decisions in the last few years, including the expansion in Rochester of the CMAS plant and all the work that's been done down there and the debt they took on associated with that? I don't know how much of it is their expectations around profitability and the lifestyle that they seek to support through the business. So I don't know. All I'm saying is I've got a contract. We pay $5 million a year for the services provided under that contract. They are important services to the residents of the city of New Bedford, and we're going into court to get a judge to say, ABC, you will continue to perform those services as you promised.
Most communities in Massachusetts have now gone privatization with trash hauling. A lot of them have gone to pay as you throw in various forms, whether it be paying for bags or paying a fee. Or both, or both. Are we? Is that on the radar at this point? Is that something that's being discussed?
Yeah, I mean, I think there would be things that force that discussion. There would be other things that force that discussion apart from ABC. The state is has some regulatory authority over landfills, and the state the state has a cap on the amount of trash per capita that can be deposited into any municipal landfill. I forget what the number is now. It's like 400 pounds of trash per whatever it is. And the state has threatened to lower that cap in order to preserve landfill space. If the state lowers that cap to a point where we've really got to do something to keep more and more stuff out of the landfill, then we have to look at pay as you throw as a way of incentivizing further recycling. Oddly enough, this China sword policy actually cuts in the opposite direction. Right? Remember the China sword, so-called. I don't know why they call it sword. I mean, who knows? But so probably
something lost in the translation.
Right. So if some Communist Party official has said, let's call it sword. That'll make it sound tough, right? But basically, the Chinese have said, we're not going to allow any batch of recyclable materials into our country if it doesn't meet a certain purity standard, right? If there's stuff in that lot that isn't recyclable, it's just junk, right? If it's food, if it's whatever it is, right? And so that standard was I think it was at about 20% of the total, and they lowered it to 0.5%. So 1/40th of the amount of permissible junk in any given lot now may make it through. So that's what has shut off imports into China of recyclables. So what pay as you throw does is it forces people to recycle more, right? Because if you have to buy the trash bags, you don't want to. The fewer you save money, the fewer bags you buy, which means you put more things into recycling, right? Of course, it also incentivizes people to put things into recycling that really aren't recyclable.
And out behind the airport, and it raises, too.
Right, and it raises the impurity rate, which makes it hard to sell on the secondary market. So So it's a long way of saying, and I can make these long explanations on radio. You can't do this on a TV soundbite, but people are entitled to this explanation. It's a long way of saying that pay-as-you-throw actually might in some ways make it more difficult for the likes of ABC to resell recycling material.
But it is a reality because the state is lowering that threshold.
Well, it is threatened to do that. It is threatened. It hasn't done it yet. There have been threats for a while, and so we might be forced into that, which would stink. But sometimes we have to. It wouldn't be the first difficult state mandate that we have to deal with.
Is that something that's likely to happen? Say within the next 5 years, we might have to go to a pay-as-you-throw situation here.
It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me. Fall River's been doing it for a while. Dartmouth does it. Many of the surrounding communities do it. Some of the cities in the state, like Worcester, has been doing it for 20 years. So, I don't know if it's a minority of communities that don't have it now.
I think most do have it now.
Yeah. But we may end up at that point.
What would be your preference, purchasing bags or just an annual fee?
Oh, God, I don't, well, an annual fee doesn't incentivize recycling.
Right.
So, in other words, if you have to pay some amount, per month, per quarter, per year, just for the service, it won't change behavior, right? You pay that fee regardless of how much trash or how much recycling you put out on the curb on a given week. The pay-as-you-throw model says, and this is the way it works in Dartmouth and Fall River and other places, we'll only collect your trash in certain bags, right? I think they're different colors,
purple bags,
purple, right? And you've got to buy those bags. And so, as I said before, the fewer bags, the better. And so to conserve on bags and bag costs, you put more stuff in recycling. So that actually, that method actually changes behavior. There is no current plan. I just want to make people, before people start calling the office and saying, you're going to pay-as-you-throw, so there's no current plan to do that. Well, I was just responding to your question about whether that might happen. And my answer is it could happen if the state forces us to, in effect, forces us to do it by lowering the amount of permissible materials that can go into the landfill.
Well, the landfill is, it's got a life expectancy. So at some point, that landfill
which is about now. I think it's last we checked, it's about 17 years.
17 more years.
Yeah, so that's for Dartmouth and New Bedford. We share the landfill at Crapo Hill.
So 17 years from now, you might be buying bags.
17 years from now, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot to consider here. One thing we do know is that there isn't a whole lot of land available for landfills in eastern Massachusetts, and so shipping garbage off to somewhere else will be expensive.
Yeah, I know when I worked in Fall River, they went through all of this kind of stuff, and they talked a lot and did very little, and everybody knew that the landfill was going to close. The mayor at that time was Flanagan. He appointed a blue ribbon committee to look at life after the landfill of the Senate. They met once a year. The landfill was going to close, and there were no plans to. That's why they wound up with such a mess with bags and annual fees and everything else, because nobody really did anything about it. I'm just wondering,
well, in Fall River they did it so hastily that there was huge.
Well, they kicked it down the road. They just kept kicking it down the road until they had no choice. But what I'm wondering is if you would be. I suggested this after you were on the last Wednesday, that we have some kind of a blue ribbon committee or maybe a city council committee or something beginning to examining these things now for alternatives now for.
Yeah, it's not, so we've talked about that. There is, as I said, there isn't any plan to do it on the table, but, there is, there is at least a discussion that's happening about, what should the city be doing as its available landfill space fills up. And so, yeah, I think we have to have that conversation, and not be flat-footed about it. But it's a hard decision, and I think, look, it's it's just one of those things where it will require a great deal of public input.
All right, let me take a break, and we'll kind of reset everything, and we'll come back. We've got a lot of.
We're done talking trash.
I guess we're all done talking trash. So we'll come back. We got some good news about community preservation money and how it's going to be divided up, and some of the projects that have been selected for that money. A new tourism campaign, and a whole bunch of other good stuff. So stay with us. You're listening to 1420 WBSM. All right, welcome back to the program. It is now 12:33. It's midweek with the mayor, Mayor Jon Mitchell, with us until 1 o'clock this afternoon. And we just covered all the trash-related topics. Let's move on a little bit.
Talked that to death.
Yeah, we talked that one to death. But we've got the city council tomorrow night is going to get the, I guess, the agreement between the city and ARL Healthcare, Inc. That's the company that's going to build the manufacturing plant in the industrial park for marijuana products, right? That's health.
Well, we had a host community agreement with them, with ARL, to establish a marijuana cultivation facility in the business park, and that will pay the city ultimately somewhere roughly 3% of gross sales, which could be significant. And they've come back to us and said, well, that host community agreement was just for wholesale sales to medical facilities and not for recreational dispensaries. And so can we amend the contract to reflect that? And here's the reason why. The existing applicants for medical marijuana licenses, whether they're cultivators or treatment centers, are entitled under the new law to a preference as applicants for full recreational licenses. So they want to do sales to recreational dispensaries, and it doesn't. For our standpoint, it shouldn't matter, right? If they're cultivating the stuff in this factory in the business park, then where they sell it should, as long as we're controlling sales in New Bedford, if they're selling it to other cities in Massachusetts, it shouldn't be a matter for us of concern. So we've agreed to amend the agreement, or proposing to the city council that we amend the agreement to reflect that. We're already maxed out in the amount of money that we can get out of them anyway. So we try to accommodate businesses where we can, and this is a business that, Luck is doing a legal thing now, and so we want them to make more money than they otherwise would, because it means more money to the city. So this is something that we're trying to accommodate them with.
But this is still a very tenuous situation, because we don't know yet what the federal government is going to do with all of this.
Right. No, we don't. And I mean, that's really for them to figure out, from our standpoint, where we want these operations should be zoned appropriately, and so that they don't have any harmful effects on neighborhoods. And we're working on the ordinance that would do just that. And we want the city to, where they are situated, to generate revenue for the city to use for whatever purpose.
So I guess the state is going to be ready to go with its regulations, by next month?
I think it's then, yeah.
Yeah, but we're going to be on hiatus. We've kind of put it off until September. So
yeah,
not
for,
much is going to happen
recreational marijuana.
For recreation,
so there's a moratorium in place, and so we're working with the city council right now on an ordinance that would zone recreational marijuana establishments, so that we protect the sanctity of neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. So where are you in that process at this point?
We're pretty far along. I have a team of department heads that have been working on it for a few months now, and they've had some really good discussions with the cannabis committee of the city council, which is headed up by Councilor Abreu. And so those discussions are pretty far down the line at this point. So something I would think would be able to emerge publicly in the not too distant future.
Now, as I recall, your preference would be to have a zone where this activity takes place in terms of selling, so it wouldn't be scattered throughout the city.
Right. Yeah. No, you don't. We don't want them in the middle of residential neighborhoods. In general, we don't want them in close proximity to things like daycare centers or schools. Obviously.
What about in the downtown?
Well, there are schools and daycare centers in the downtown. I personally don't think they should go downtown either. In general, I think they should go in areas that are zoned industrial. So
that would be retail stores in industrial.
Well, all of them. Yeah.
All of it. So what about, there's some confusion too over, we don't even know yet whether or not this type of activity will be allowed in bars. I mean, you can't smoke a cigarette in a bar. I can't imagine you'd be able to smoke a joint
I don't think
bar,
that's on-site consumption is another of those open issues. And my own feeling is that we don't want that because it's just very hard to control. None of this is to say that people can't go out and smoke. They can already do that. Already, it's legal now, but when it comes to dispensing, when it comes to sale and open public usage, there's a role for city government to reasonably regulate that activity.
So your druthers then would be for maybe at the industrial park, or you had mentioned at one point Hathaway Road, on and off the highway.
Those are two examples of areas that are zoned industrial. Okay. Yeah, there's some others along Mount Pleasant Street. That's another example.
Right. So now what about the edibles? How concerned are you about that?
Very concerned. I'm concerned about kids eating them. Yeah.
And would they be allowed to be sold? I mean, under the state law, they would be, right?
Yeah, I don't know that. It's not clear to me that I don't think the city has the authority to regulate the kinds of to regulate the types of products that are sold. We're looking to it's either you're dispensing, however, whether it's something you smoke or something you eat or whatever, that's left up to state regulation.
All right, so we're pretty much on hold until September when.
It could be earlier. It's going to take the city council a little while to go through it, but the work is being done. People should know that work is being done on it. We want this stuff to be sold in a responsible way in New Bedford, in a way that is sensitive to the needs of neighborhoods.
So the ARL contract, that's a good deal for the city?
It's a really good deal for the city. Yeah, we're going to get some good money out of that.
All right. The Community Preservation Committee, we've been waiting for announcements on that. What would be funded under that? And you've got a list here. Do you need the list, or do you remember the month?
I remember more or less what was funded.
Okay.
Yeah, you can quiz me if you want.
Well, okay. What's the first one?
What's the third one alphabetically?
The third one alphabetically. Yes. Some big projects here that would get money under CPC. 17 projects.
Yeah. So they fall into two. Well, actually, they fall into three categories under the Community Preservation Act. There are projects for parks and open space and recreation. There's historic preservation projects, and then there are some affordable housing projects, and that's under state statute. The biggest one is parks and recreation, followed by historic preservation. And to the extent that there is money for affordable housing, it's usually done in conjunction with projects that are really about historic preservation. So there's some overlap in the categories in that way. But they're good projects. So,
and this is something we get calls on from time to time. People will say, what is up with that money? Because this is something the public voted to pay additional, 1% on their property tax to go into a fund to be matched by the state in order to fund some projects. So now we finally determined what those projects are going to be. Yeah,
and they're good projects. So, and that's not determined by me, the mayor. It's determined by the Community Preservation Committee, which is comprised of 7 city residents. And they did a great job working through a whole long list of applications, but it's going to fund improvements to the city's 3 major parks, Brooklawn, Buttonwood, and Hazelwood. It'll fund important historic preservation projects like the First Baptist Church rehabilitation, and create new open space, including the expansion of the Acushnet Sawmill space in the North End, and lots of others in between. So this is really good investment. And what's not reflected in that list is like how much private sector money is being leveraged as well, because there are matches along the way for many of these projects. Not so much the projects that are taking place in parks, because those are public spaces, but the historic preservation projects all leverage additional private money.
Strand Theater, Italian Theater, some of those would get Siemens Bethel, that type of thing would get some Schooner Ernestina. Now, is the money divided up equally amongst these projects? Or?
No, they're not. No, okay. It's all over the map. I think the biggest ones, the biggest 2 are the open space project along the Acushnet Sawmill, the expansion of that park space up there, followed by the Hazelwood Park work that's already started a couple of years ago. So those are the biggest ones, but there are things like new basketball courts at Brooklawn, new tennis courts. Actually, no, they weren't the tennis courts at Buttonwood. The Buttonwood project had to do with the lighting of the baseball field. Okay, now I'm giving the cheat sheet.
Do you want the list? I've got it right here.
No, still I cry uncle. So things like the Ernestina is part of Veterans Transition House, is getting a couple $100,000. The Bethel had this huge rehab project in the last couple of years, and they're still finishing that up. So that's getting some money.
Where is Abolition Row Park?
So that's on the corner of School and 7th Street, right across from the Nathan and Paula Johnson house.
Okay.
So. That's a new park project as well. A James Arnold Mansion restoration. There are lots of really good projects here. Dias Field. So there are projects. People should know there are projects in every single ward. All 6 wards are getting projects, and totaling about $2.6 million. So this is money well spent. So we've seen really good progress in the appearance of our parks and the condition of our parks in the last few years. This is going to take it to the next level, and there's more money to come. In the fall, the CPC, the Community Preservation Committee, will start the next year's review, and so there will be more projects on top of it in the not too distant future. So these are really good upgrades to the city's quality of life. We have great parks. They've been in need of rehabilitation and care and love in the last few years, and now they're getting the attention, and people will enjoy our parks even more when we've been able to see these projects through.
All right, let me take a break. Your calls for the mayor are next, 508-996-0500. Grab a line, because they go fast this time of the program. 508-996-0500. That's easy for me to say. 508-996-0500.
You need a break, Barry.
Yeah, we'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the program. It is 12:48, and we're going to get right to the phones. 508-996-0500. Let's start right here, and you're first with the mayor on WBSM. Go ahead.
Hi. We have, I presume we have, I'm sure our attorneys have done that. The bond actually, the performance bond expires at the end of June. So and under the contract, ABC is required to re-up it annually. So one of the things that we'll be asking the court to do is to force ABC to to re-up on that bond so that we have a hedge in case ABC runs into further trouble down the line, assuming that we stay with ABC. It is a family-owned corporation. I don't know how. It's not obviously not a publicly traded company. I don't know how the shares of equity are apportioned. My understanding is that the Camara family owns a controlling share of it, and that's about all I can tell you.
508-996-0500. You're up next with the mayor on WBSM. Go ahead. Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, you got to let everybody know that I actually don't play an instrument.
I was just going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Barry's going to put me on the spot. I do. Oh, that's great for advertising.
Well, free meat. What are you complaining
rats.
about?
You're part of the entertainment. Well, you waited a whole year to tell me this. I would have gone down there myself and caught him.
All right, let's let the mayor respond. Rats and Wings Court. What do you think?
Well, there shouldn't be. So if people let us know, we'll go catch them wherever they are, Wings Court or anywhere else in the city.
Eradicate them, right?
Eradicate them. Yeah.
508-996-0500. You next with the mayor on 1420 WBSM.
I'm all right. How you doing? So I'm going to try I can't give you a precise answer without the language of the contract in front of me, but they're required to remove recyclables. They're not allowed to throw recyclables into our landfill, at least, and that's because state regs won't allow them to do that. They can sometimes haulers can get a waiver from that requirement and actually throw recyclables into the landfill. We obviously don't want that to happen because we don't want our landfill to fill up faster than it already is.
All right. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. I've got to take the last break. Stay right there. 508-996-0500. If you've got a call or a question for the mayor, we'll have time to do a little bit more. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to the program. We've got a couple of moments left until the top of the hour. We're with Mayor Jon Mitchell until 1 o'clock. It is Midweek with the mayor, and we are talking about a lot of different things. A big weekend this weekend, Memorial Day weekend.
Right. So, well, let's hope the weather accommodates us. But either way, I just encourage everybody to come on out and honor our veterans at all the veterans-related services this weekend. And there are many, of course. The biggest one is the city's Memorial Day Parade, which will step off at 11:30 at the corner of Parker Street and Hathaway Boulevard, right by New Bedford High School, right at New Bedford High School. And then it'll travel east on Parker Street down to the Common, and that's where we'll have a brief speaking ceremony, the same routine that we've had for many years.
Why not down Union Street like it used to do?
Well, I think they've switched back and forth over the years, and the Memorial Day Parade went back to where it had traditionally been, that is down Parker Street to the Common, down to the Soldiers and Sailors Monument, which is one of the city's oldest veterans monuments, and certainly one of the most beautiful and prominent. So it's been done there. There was a back to the old tradition decision that was made a few years ago. We have a number of cemetery ceremonies at Rural and Pine Grove cemeteries. We have the City Hall memorial service honoring our Vietnam veterans at noon on Sunday. We encourage people to go to that. And, of course, we have the big Fishman's Memorial Service, which is a unique New Bedford ceremony, and that's at 10 a.m. at Pier 3, where we honor fishermen who have been lost at sea.
So Memorial Day, summertime is here, and that generally
doesn't feel like summertime, though.
But that generally means, an uptick in trouble. People spend more time outdoors and all of that. We all set for that? Summertime blues or what?
Yeah, well, so the police department, so I mean, obviously I think people are feeling that things have become more stable in some of the neighborhoods that we've had some trouble with over the last few years, and that's, I think, attributable to the intensified police work that we had been talking about a few months back. It's working, which is good. But as we know, in the summertime, we do have to focus a little bit more on public safety, and so the chief has had the department focus even a little bit more on certain of those hot spots, just to send the message for everybody that we'll be watching. So we want everybody to enjoy their summer, but if people are acting up, if they're causing a public safety threat, then we will deal with it.
Geez, before you know it, we'll be popping the Madeira wine open at the feast grounds. Right?
Don't hurry us through summertime, Barry. It's that's still the feast is still a couple of months out, and so we'll take our time. It's actually pretty decent out today, so people should get out and take in a little bit of sunshine.
Just bring your radio with you.
Just bring your radio.
Don't be telling my audience to walk out on me now. Go outside. Go ahead.
Well, you could keep the car radio on and roll down the windows. How's that?
Well, you download a app, too. Have you got a app on your phone? You got your phone right over there. You download, go to your app store, right? And just said WBSM.
I do. No, I have it. We talked about this. Yeah. You told me to stop using Radio Pup and start using the WBSM
Absolutely.
app. So I've made the switch.
And it's great. It's great. It sounds good.
Absolutely.
And you can hear me in Sheboygan, Mayor.
I will look forward to that day.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it very much. We'll see you next week. I'm going to break for the news, obviously, on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon, and we'll be back with more NFL making news today with a new national anthem policy. Stay tuned. We'll talk about it.